Hi friends, this is Caitlin and I'm so excited to finally say Happy October. This video is a bonus as a celebration for the beginning of October and the end of my October Eve series. Today I'll be recreating a card that I made at the beginning of September. I had a lot of people reach out and ask for a tutorial or a video showing how I achieved the look, especially of the glowing part of these jack-o'-lanterns. So I couldn't go back in time and record what I did then, so instead I recolored the whole thing. So now I have 2 copies of this, which is fine because I absolutely love it. And I'll be sharing with you today a full walkthrough of exactly how I colored everything in. This first part is really simple. I'm just going in with a deep blue at the bottom middle part of the sky that you can see through the fence, and then going in with a still dark but 1 shade lighter blue and just kind of filling in all of the rest of it. I kept it very clean and simple for that sky. All of our detail is going to be in the wood and in those pumpkins, so there's no reason to go above and beyond with the sky. To kind of help with any of the streaking, you can see I'm kind of scrubbing in my color. So instead of going in lines all the way across, which can sometimes lead to those streaks, I'm just going in with little circles and just kind of blending everything out that way. I also kept the ground very simple because you can barely see it anyway. Just going in with 2 different brown shades, keeping the darker right up under those images so it looks more like a shadow, but that's pretty much it for that part too. These are all digital images from the company Sweet November Stamps, and so I arranged these into their layout on my own using Adobe Spark Post, which I have on an iPad, and it just helps to kind of layer each of the different digital images to create the scene. So the corn stalks, each pumpkin, the fence are all separate, and I added on the sentiment into the sign. It comes blank, but you could put any sentiment you want. Alright, for this wood graining, there's going to be a lot of it. So the first couple I left still sped up, but not too crazy fast. And then towards the end I did speed it up a bunch because it gets very repetitive. So you can see I'm going in with my darkest shade first. I like to put a knot somewhere in the wooden plank first, just to kind of set up my design around that. And then for the slats of the main actual gate part that opens, I added a heavy shadow on the right hand side of all of those as well. So for each plank, I'm going in with my darkest shade, adding that knot, and then giving a little bit of a squiggle around the knot, and the rest is just going in with different lines, trying to just kind of keep that up and down motion, and going in with the medium shade after and then the lightest shade last. I wish I had a way to explain like why or how I make those squiggles. It's kind of just instinct. If you want, you could 100% look up and get a reference picture online of some wood detailing. But honestly, for these, I haven't ever done one that I've looked at and been like, wow, that looks stupid. It's pretty organic, obviously, in nature. So just kind of giving it a little bit of flow, but it doesn't have to be super straight. Your lines don't have to be perfect. That's the nice part. It actually looks better if they're not perfect, because they wouldn't be in real life. I also want to be really transparent and let you know that this card took an hour and a half to color, and that was the second time I had done it, and I already knew what colors were going where and what my plan of attack was. So these types of scenes, at least for me, are a time investment, but it's also very therapeutic for me to be able to just sit and color. I'll put on some YouTube videos in the background, or if it's a Saturday, I'll try to put on Adventures in Coloring with Amy on Facebook. She'll do Facebook Lives coloring that are a couple hours long, and so I can color while she's coloring, and there's chat, and it feels really nice. It's a nice way to calm down from my week, so I don't mind the time investment, but I just want to be clear, because when you're seeing it in a 14-minute video, it can be very deceptive that if it takes you longer, there's something wrong, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that process taking whatever it needs to take for you. If you don't feel like you have that amount of time to invest, though, I don't want you to feel like you can't do this on your own, you could. It would be so easy to break it into sections, like just doing the fence and then the pumpkins, and just break it into little pieces so you're not sitting there for an hour and a half straight if you can't. So for this sign, I made sure to change up my brown markers so that the sign would still stand out against all the other wood grain. And I'm doing the same kind of wood grain process, except you can see I avoided the area behind the words with my darkest marker, and that way it just helps to stand out. It makes it a little more legible. I did a couple little sweeps of color back there so it wasn't too obvious, but you just want to keep your darkest lines away from your font. Apologize for the angle on the crow of not being able to see as much. I've been playing around with the angles on my camera while I'm coloring up close to try to make sure you can see everything. For this one, we're just going to have to deal with it. So I'm going in with a dark gray for the crow and kind of just adding in his shadows, following some of those artist drawn lines, and then bumping up to one shade lighter and just kind of filling in the gaps. I like to give those little flicking motions up on his chest where those little feather marks are drawn. I think it helps to break up all that darkness, and you just want to be mindful that you're not putting black next to black on either side of an artist drawn line if you can prevent it. Otherwise everything will just get lost. Those details will just go away. So you can see I'm keeping my lightest gray up against my darkest black, or gray. So that everything has some kind of contrast and you can still see those details. I filled in his beak and his feet with the same kinds of colors, and then added a tiny bit of a cool gray metallic to the gate closure, and then moved on to the corn stalks. So these I went in with a couple different browns and orangey yellows just to kind of give it that dried up corn husk texture. And these are really simple. I just added that main stem line through the center part of each leaf, and then just tiny flicks on the actual corn cob pieces that are there, and blended out my shades. I think these really pretty golden colors play well off of those dark blues. And then when we add in all of the warm fall orangey tones at the bottom with the pumpkins, the whole thing just has that really nostalgic fall feeling to it. For both of the versions I did of this card, I did everything except the pumpkins first. There's something about knocking out that background so that by the time you get to your main feature, you kind of know how everything is set up. I think it just helps me to know how much color, how much contrast, making sure I'm picking the right color tones, versus if I start with those, then sometimes I get lost as I'm filling in my background. So definitely play with the order that you fill in your pictures, your scenes, to see what works for you. But for me, most of the time, I prefer to do my background first and then go in with my little characters or whatever my main feature is at the end. So I'm going to start by coloring in my cream colored pumpkins first. I'm going in with the E43, and I'm just following in and filling in the artist drawn lines that already exist for the deepest part of those curves where the shadow would be the most intense. And then I'm going in to add my own extra shading by flicking color down from the top and the bottom. And you can see for the section to the middle right, I left a gap of space at the top and very bottom and curved my shadow around there. That just helps to create that rounded effect where that highlight, the light would be bouncing off of that upper edge and corner. To fill in the inside of the pumpkins, I knew I wanted to give them a very eerie glow, but I started out by going in with my darkest color. I really wanted to create an intense contrast on the inside of these pumpkins, going from some of the lightest quadruple zero shades I own in the middle to the darkest brown that I own. So I laid in those darkest shadows first and kept my lines very thin, and then started going in from the center to create my lightest shading. I'm just creating kind of little C motions to create this glow effect, working from my lightest color out to my darkest, and then I kind of work my way back in, just layering different yellows, keeping that center part as light as I can, and getting darker and orangier the further out we go so that it blends into those deepest shades. I'm not drawing any complete circles. All of these are just like little half circles or C shapes and just kind of layering them up. You want there to be an overlap in color so that nothing looks stark. That way, as long as they're overlapped, it looks more natural and like it's a candle glow or some kind of eerie glow. And for the second one, I definitely knew I wanted to centralize the glow so that it would look like his eyes and almost like he was a little bit cross-eyed. I just think that's so adorable. With this one, because the space is so much smaller, I didn't go in with my darkish shading first. I started with the yellow and worked my way out to the darker shades, but I did make sure to include some of those darkest parts right in the very edges and corners. Sometimes I write out what I'm going to say to you guys and then read it as I'm doing my voiceover. Today, you can probably tell I'm not doing that. This is very organic. I'm just trying to explain to you as I'm going through what my process was so that you can tell what my thought process was as well as just what I'm actually doing. And I thought that it would be better if it came out more naturally. So if this is a little more scattered than normal, I apologize for that, but I'm just trying to give you the best advice I can in the most natural way that I can. So I know I breezed through some of these pumpkins really quick, but we are doing so many of them. The process is the same, just the colors change up. So again, I went in with my deepest shades for these orange pumpkins, following in those artist drawn lines, and then going in with my medium and lighter shades, just filling in the gaps. I definitely didn't want the center part of their faces to be too blank, so I did carry down with the medium shade to the areas where I thought those lines would continue. You can make these as lumpy and bumpy or as smooth as you want, just by how much of those darker shades you're adding in your own flicks. You could just do these shadings that I'm adding right now and stop there and fill in the rest, and they would look very smooth and a little bit, in a good way, more cartoony. It all just depends on what you like. I love a lumpy bumpy pumpkin. I also wanted to point out that I did my cream pumpkins first on purpose. When I use my lighter markers, and I've already done oranges or reds around them, if my marker overlaps that line at all, it usually ends up smearing or dragging over that red or orange color into the item that I want to be white or cream colored. And so by knocking those out first and then going in with the orange, I just get a much cleaner finish, and I don't have to be as stressed out while I'm coloring those in to make sure that the markers aren't picking up or smearing any of those deeper shades. It happens with most of my markers, but it's especially noticeable when we're talking about reds and oranges. They love to travel. I really hope that seeing this kind of scene broken down into steps like this helps to make this whole process seem less daunting for anyone out there who's been wanting to try this type of coloring work, but has just been nervous or it feels overwhelming for you. I just started doing these types of scenes last fall, and just in 1 year of routinely practicing and watching other people color and trying out my own techniques and just trial and error, I've seen huge progress in my coloring, and I know that if you just jump in and get started with practice, you'll get where you want to be too. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this fun bonus video, and I hope you have a great day. Happy crafting!